We seldom talk about poetry in the Malazan Book of the Fallen, and today I'm going to do that. It has been highlighted by Philip Chase and also A.P. Canavan, but apart from that, I haven't seen much on poetry. I'm writing poetry myself, so I think the poetic aspect of Malazan Book of the Fallen is very interesting. We also know that the inspiration for Steven Erikson has, to a large extent, he has said, being epics like the Iliad, for example, which is obviously a poetic masterpiece. And if you read Malazan, you will quickly notice that there are poems in the beginnings of many chapters. It's not always poems. It's can be poems. It can be historical accounts. It can be quotes from people. It can be just a an reflection, an explorer's reflection of maybe an island or a geographical place in the Malazan world. It can be different things. But poetry is actually the first thing that we encounter in Malazan Book of the Fallen. And for those not knowing what that means, I wanted to give you the example of the first poem, I would call it, that you encounter in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. And it goes like this. Now these ashes have grown cold, we open the old book. These old stained pages recount the tales of the fallen, a frayed empire, words without warmth. The hearth has ebbed. Its gleam and live sparks are but memories against dimming eyes. What caused my mind, what humed my thoughts as I opened the book of the fallen and breathed deep the scent of history? Listen, then, to these words carried out on that breath. These tales are the tales of us all, again, yet again. We are history relived, and that is all, without end. That is all. So, usually they are written in what it seems to be some kind of free form, and I'm not, a reader of poetry in that way, so maybe someone else can read it in a more, beautiful manner than I did it right now. But the poems are there, and I think the poems like that give us a sense of depth because it frames the book, all the 10 books, and it also you know, create atmosphere, what to expect, what to feel. Something very deep here, obviously, and something very emotional, and something filled with wisdom. This is not so different from some words in the Hindu epic Mahabharata. I don't have the quote in my head. Maybe some of you following this have. I have it in the bookshelf, but it says like something like, if you, what is not written here, you can't find it anywhere, because the wisdom that is in the Mahabharata is all the universe, all the humanities, all the God's wisdom is in the Mahabharata. That's a way to interpret it, at least. And it's not so different from the beginning of Gardens of the Moon in a way, because this is just history relived, right? Relived. It's very interesting. How come we don't talk so much about the poetry in Malazan? I don't know. I think maybe I'm asking you, are you reading the poetry in Malazan Book of the Fallen, or are you skipping the poetry? Is the poetry only for those reading Malazan Book of the Fallen the second time? Because maybe then you realize that, oh, that poem in the beginning of the chapter, it actually meant something. Because usually the poems can recall recall things, and also connect with things that we as a reader don't know so much about when we are new to Malazan Book of the Fallen. So maybe you can answer me, of course, and give your ideas in the comments below. I think the poems, I will give a few examples more. I think the poems, they foreshadow the chapter. It's like framing the chapter. The chapters are divided in many different sections, and we follow many different characters. I think these poetic beginnings of each Malazan chapter has an important part to keeping the chapter together. I think that's very important, especially for me as a reader. So when I read half the chapter, I used to go back to the poem or the so-called epigraph, right? read it again, and then when I finish the chapter, I go back again and read it just to remind myself, was there something with this introduction to the chapter that really helped me when I finished the chapter to understand what was happening. As I said, there can also be individual stories or quotes. Also in the beginning of The Guardians of the Moon, one of the first chapters, there is basically a poem about becoming or losing a child to become a soldier, for example. So they can be very emotional, and I think they are good. You also have in the beginning of Guardians of the Moon, actually earlier, or I know, maybe just exactly after the initial poem which I read. Then you have the when you turn that page, you have the Call to Shadow, it's called. The Emperor is dead, so too his right hand now cold, now severed. But mark these dying shadows, twinned and flowing, bloody and beaten, down and away from mortal sight, from scepters, rules dismissed, from the guild candelabra the light now fled, from a hearth ringed in hard jewels, 7 years this warmth has bled. So this is about the emperor. The emperor is dead. So sounds very dramatic, Shakespearean in a way, right? And then if we go even further, when we come to book 1, we have actually an historical account. This is not a poem, and that is about it's the eighth year of the free cities of Genebakis. I won't spoil anything more for you. So, but it describes the situation in the Malazan Empire, you could say, and then you come to this poem I talked about it's called Mother's Lament, actually. About the son who goes into war, as I interpret it. Maybe you interpret that in another way. So I think the poems in the books are very strong. I haven't seen so much analysis of Erikson's poems. I've seen some on Reddit. There is actually some poet, I don't remember the name now, which is something that's very Eriksonian. So if you know that, please comment as well. Actually, the poems as well, they continue to all the books. I have Dead House Gates here. This is the monsoon version, so to speak, at least Swedish monsoon, because it was raining a lot, and this book got thick because of the damp, or the rain and the damp weather. Sometimes the poems are almost haiku-like because they are very short. I don't know if you can call it poems always, but I think they are very poetic. What see you in the horizon's bruised smear that cannot be blotted out by your raised hand? That is the prologue to Dead House Gates, actually. And see if I find this one. It's here. So difficult to find in the pages here. Yeah, this one. This is the chapter 1. And it says, the path of hands, Mesremb. Mesremb. All pronunciations are difficult in Malazan. I think we chose our own, right? And all came to imprint their passage on the path, to send the dry winds their clawing claim to ascendancy. And all came to imprint their passage on the path, to send the dry winds their clawing claim to ascendancy. So you have these poems. I think they are beautiful. And there are poems in poetry in other fantasies as well, like Lord of the Rings, for example. And there is a lot of beautiful poems in there, especially in the Silmarillion, and when it's connected to the elves, I think mostly. I think the poems, or rhymes rather, when it comes to Tom Bombadil, for example, or the Hobbits in Bilbo. It's more children rhymes, and maybe making fantasy look like something only for small people, kids, young people. I think Erikson takes this to another level. Maybe you have examples of other poetry in other fantasies, so please tell me. And actually this thing with fantasy, it overlaps to mythology and to religious works as well. We obviously have poetic poems and poetic writing in all religions and all the epics, and you have all the Christian texts, for example, Eastern religions as well, that we call it that for to simplify it. And also in the Iliad, as I mentioned, and the Odyssey, of course, you have poems everywhere. I think poems, it's a special rhythm there. They can evoke a lot of feelings, and we tend to easily remember poems because of the rhythm. So rhythm is a part for people learning things. There are special it's a special meter called shloka, for example, in Hindu poems, you could call them, and very easy to learn them because they have this very fixed rhythm, very fixed meter. And you have the mantra, for example, as well, which channels spiritual power, if you spiritual effects, you could say, if you believe in that, and you can feel very peaceful, for example, with the mantra. And it has a rhythm. So I think the poems in fantasy has a very important part of getting us into the right atmosphere, into the right mood, feeling that it's something deeper than only the text. It has historical roots, legends, it's myth, and so on. It is connected a bit to the video I posted yesterday about lore. So that is just a short lore rant, and this is a poetry rant. I want to hear your thoughts on poetry and fantasy. Give me examples on books, not only Malazan, of course, that has poetry and that books that you enjoyed. It can also be sci-fi. You know, Malazan books are very inspired by Dune, as I've understood it, in a way, at least as a structure. And actually, Dune has a lot of these epigraphs and introductions, and maybe not poems then, but more of historical accounts, as I remember it at least. So that was all for this video. I hope you liked it, and if you did, like and subscribe, of course, and see you next time. Thank you. Bye.